Welcome everyone to Hi-Rez Showcase Day at the SMITE World Championships. I'm with a fantastic panel here of developers going to be talking about the art of crossovers. SMITE had some amazingly huge crossover events this year, and we want to show you some behind-the-scenes details. I'm Hi-Rez Ajax, the design director of SMITE, and the rest of my team is going to introduce themselves now.
Hey, I'm Trevor. I'm head of partnerships and business development for Hi-Rez, and I was the one that talked with Nickelodeon.
Hi, I'm Anna. I was animation point on Zuko, and I'm an animator on the SMITE team.
Hey, I'm Mark Ross. I'm a concept artist on SMITE, and I helped art direct the Avatar project.
All right, thank you all for joining me. We have a lot of things to talk about. We're going to go through the pitch process, the design process, the early steps through each crossover, and then we're going to take you through the art pipeline, show a little bit about how we create our characters from beginning to end, and we're going to look at the final products and comment on some of our favorite parts and show some extra details that the artists know about that maybe you didn't notice playing at home. We're going to go through that all the way for Avatar, and then we're going to go do that again for the Ninja Turtles. So we got a lot to talk about. Let's jump right into it. Our first step is Avatar the pitch, making Avatar happen. So how did we get started with this, Trevor?
Yeah, that's a good question, AJ. Essentially, how we started this was a lot of conversations that kind of started way back in the beginning of 2019 at GDC. Just meeting with Nickelodeon the first time and kind of just talking about working together in general. We didn't really have a target for which IP we wanted to work with. We just knew that, Nickelodeon had just fantastic IP, and it was something that, we kind of wanted to look at and kind of explore together and really collaborate on what's the best, piece of content to bring forward in SMITE.
I do remember that now, and I'm sure Anna and Mark do as well. We probably can't go into too much details, but we did a lot of pitches for a lot of different Nickelodeon IPs, and we wanted to kind of show the potential we had with the game and our skin potential with the studio when we were in the early talks with them, and that was a very fun process. And we can't say maybe what some of these other IPs that we were working with because we ended up with some fantastic ones. So, Trevor, how did we go about focusing on Avatar?
Well, really this kind of all started with Ruby. Ruby and Hi-Rez have a really strong relationship in general. And when we first initially pitched an IP crossover, Ruby was something that came up in discussions early. And the reason for that is kind of these Facebook analytics we use and just social analytics in general, where we look at kind of affinity towards linear media IP. And Ruby was kind of up towards the top of that list, and we thought it'd be really fun in the beginning, really to try to kick off IP discussions with something that really resonated with Hi-Rez and SMITE fans. And so, starting off and kicking off the IP collaboration with Ruby was really the first step in landing the Nickelodeon IP. And the success of that battle pass and the success of that crossover and the work done by Hi-Rez really, and the SMITE team really is what catapulted us into even more deep discussions with Nickelodeon early in December and January last year.
Okay. So we really showed what we can do, right? That's what we did.
Exactly.
And the other point you made is that these crossovers aren't random. We're using tools and social media to measure what types of shows, what types of TV shows and other games and movies and things like that do our players enjoy when they're not playing SMITE. And Avatar was Ruby was a really high crossover feature for us. I mean, that data, and Avatar was as well. And then go ahead, and now you see when we started working on Avatar, Anna and Mark were two huge Avatar fans already before we even got started, right?
Oh, yeah.
That's right.
Oh,
and, from my side, I took the data on Avatar and really all of the IPs, and it wasn't that I just strategically reached out to Nickelodeon. I reached out to tens of studios to ask about opportunities to work together on the top 25 IPs. and I had multiple conversations across the board with all sorts of different IP holders, both in the anime world, in the live action world, in the gaming world. And it takes a lot of discussion. It takes a lot of concepting from the art team to really figure out what's going to work well, and really it comes down to just continuing to push on opportunities and finding the right one that fits really well with our player base and resonates well. And timing is everything. And having the discussions around the Avatar launch with Nickelodeon on Netflix, as well as when we were thinking about having the crossover come out on SMITE, all of those things factor into the discussions.
That's a really smart process, and I think one thing for our fans to take away from is just how personal it is. A lot of it is really Trevor and our studio talking with these other content creators, these people who've made these fantastic shows and movies. They care a lot about their characters, and we want them to know that we're going to honor those characters. We're going to portray them as the best we can. We're going to do top quality art. They want to see the passion we have about our characters is equivalent to they having about their characters, right? So really, that's what is a huge part of our design process. Once Trevor goes and spends a lot of time talking to those people, we start working on the more detailed internal pitches, right? What gods are going to fit what characters? What characters are people going to demand that we put in the game, right? What are people going to expect the most? How are we going to fit these characters together? And people like Anna and Mark are fantastic help at that, because not only were they talented artists on the SMITE team that understand the skills and understand the abilities, they also are big fans of the show. So I'm sure, when you guys started on the art process, where was the first place we went to?
I think everybody immediately thought of Vamana as being a perfect fit for Aang. And we kind of did too. Like, internally, we were like, okay, yeah, it makes sense. But then as we thought about it more and more, we were like, he doesn't really fit. And then I think I forget who, somebody brought up Merlin. And as we thought about it, it was just like, actually, yeah, Merlin is the best fit that we have for Aang.
And one thing to note from that is that over the time of doing crossovers, we've been learning that focusing on the combat, the SMITE abilities, and what matches well with the powers of these characters, whatever the way they fight, the way they move, what's going to match up there is best. So a lot of people thought Vamana, because he had a similar body shape, right, to Aang, which is an important part of it, and Anna could speak more to that. But really, when you look at the big picture, it's only just a part of it. And I remember also, Mark, at the early stages, we even had some pitches for like Horus and Jingwei, because they had like airy, magical wind abilities. They're like, that makes sense for the airbender, but obviously those are real big stretches for the character. And then Merlin, we were like, that pitch, I don't remember, honestly. I wish I could credit one person, but it's a very team effort. A lot of these discussions are held in big rooms with a lot of us talking, a lot of us throwing out ideas. And the Merlin idea came up, and we're like, well, Aang's really defined. He is the last airbender, but also he's really defined by his ability to master different elements. And what better way to show that than on Merlin? And Merlin is a grown man as opposed to a young boy. So there was a big body change there. But Anna, we made it work, right?
Oh, totally. Yeah, I remember, I was going to say a little bit earlier, like I remember sitting in the break room with everybody, like the Titan Forge meeting that we all had, where we kind of went through some of the cool stuff coming up for us, and seeing Avatar on the screen, I'm pretty sure, like, internally I was screaming with excitement. But to go back to, like, Merlin, is a full-grown man, and Aang is a 200-year-old, 12-year-old boy. Or what is it, 200, 100? I can't even remember. But going from those proportions down to a little kid, like, everybody was involved. It was pretty much, Aang in particular was god tier. At least, like, everything animation side had to be done from scratch to fit not only the kit for Merlin, but also Aang as a character. And since, like, Aang is the face of Avatar, a lot of attention to detail was paid on him in particular.
So Anna brought up some good points there, which is obviously when we started talking about the internal pitch for Avatar, we were like, Aang. Aang was the only one we were like, I think 100%, the whole team.
Right.
No one had any debate that Aang shouldn't be part of it. And when even we were started talking about, we had some options, like Anna mentioned, God tier. We have our skins, which often we use internal terminology. Tier 3, which is modeling changes. Tier 4 involves heavier rigging and animation changes. Tier 5 is all of those things plus a lot of extra features. And honestly, for Aang, we created a new tier called God tier, which effectively felt like higher than a tier 5. Pretty much a completely new character, as if we were making a completely new god. And the thing that I think was really important for us to learn as a team there was that was completely the right call, right? Because this was the number one character that everybody wanted. And we had learned from working on crossovers with Ruby how important it was to make sure that we got that combat and ability and powers matchup. And so we were just like, from the very beginning of this internal pitch, we were like, we're going to do whatever we can to make sure that Aang is perfect and beautiful and amazing, right? And we structured our kind of whole workflow from that initial pillar.
Yeah, and I think
My heart still
one of the
flutters when I
things
see him.
one of the things to note, is as much as the business development process is boring and contract based and such, really once we kind of nailed down the concept direction, we were in a discussion with Avatar, with the Nickelodeon team and the creators of Avatar weekly. And we were talking about line weight, and we were talking about animations, and we were like every single item, every single like detail was discussed with the teams that brought the original Avatar to life. And I find that that's really important for us as we think about these kind of crossovers. Is it's not just a costume. We want to bring to life these characters inside of SMITE with as much realism and as much justice to their original character design as possible. And that's why we really focus not just on their visual style, but also the way that they act and the way that they're animated and the way that their movement works. And you see that a lot, not only with Avatar, but as we talk about later when we get into Turtles, a lot of the changes that we made to see that stuff.
Yeah, that's spot on. It's a collaborative, creative process. It's not like we just like get like, okay, you've got permission, go do whatever you want, right? We're gonna, constantly work with the IP holder, and not only are we gonna work with them, we want to impress them, right? Like that's what Mark and Anna were working on. They wanted to make characters in Avatar in 3D in a way that wowed the original creators, and I really think we did that. We heard from a lot of people, both behind the scenes from Nickelodeon as well as just like media outlets and game journalists and stuff like that they were like, this is the best that the Avatar characters have ever looked in 3D, right? We literally have people saying that about us, which is just a huge achievement and really one of our main goals throughout the whole process. And just huge congrats to the art team and Anna and Mark for being able to pull off something like that.
It was such an honor to get to work on Avatar.
Yeah. Oh my god.
It changed my life as a kid, and it forever shaped how I view good storytelling, character arcs, just media and entertainment in general. Like everything filters back to Avatar. So
that's amazing.
I was beyond hyped to get to work on it.
Yeah, so and to give a little detail to our players, Mark is a concept artist, so he focuses on 2D illustrations, drawings, as you might use in a non-development setting, that term.
Right.
But he was also our art director on the project. We expanded Mark's roles to take from the beginning to end the character's artistic design process and to make sure that the 2D art, the 3D art, the animation and the effects and the acting and the voice work all came together. And that was really awesome. And I think that system worked really well. And having Mark in that role as someone who's so passionate about the IP was fantastic. And it sounds like, Anna, you were equally as passionate about Avatar before even getting started on it.
Oh my god.
Probably
I was actually telling Trevor this yesterday. Like this project was like a super crazy dream come true. Like I had no idea younger years that I would ever be able to touch these characters that mean a lot to me too. And so I know this was kind of the same with Ali, who was point on Aang, animation side, and Brock, who was point on Ali was point on Korra, and Brock was point on Aang. But these characters, like, means so much to us. I know Allie would talk your ear off about Korra for sure. So like just I don't it felt like a dream for a long time. It didn't feel real. It's so crazy. It still feels like that sometimes. I see like clips of people playing our game and then I'm like, oh yeah, Zuko's in our game. That's so cool. Or just seeing the Appa Award, I get really excited.
Oh yes.
Yeah,
Trevor, did you have something?
Yeah, from my side, it's funny, right? Because I'm a little older than a lot of the team on SMITE, and so I didn't grow up with Avatar as a show I watched as a kid. Mm-hmm. And I trusted that the team knew what they were doing, and we were looking at other IPs, and both newer and older. And the team was like, no, we have to do Avatar. This is such a cool IP. I really think it's something that'll resonate with the fans. And the data showed that was going to be very true as well. And it's a trust thing. And we're going to collaborate together. And we're going to make sure that every single person out there is seeing the best work possible.
For sure. And I'm actually a little older too, I guess you could say, but I grew up watching this with my youngest brother. I have a brother who's about 6 years younger than me. He started watching it and I'm like, this is really good. I'm going to watch this with you too. It's like I was into bigger kid shows or whatever at the time, but I was just like, this is so good. We've got to start watching this. So we talked a lot about the pitch and we talked a lot about Aang. I wanted us to touch now a bit on Zuko and Korra. Obviously, one big thing that came up immediately when we did this crossover was a lot of other people asking for a lot of other characters. And we had the same difficulties. We want you all to know, like, this was not an easy discussion for us. Personally, I think Uncle Iroh is probably my favorite character in the entire arc, with maybe Appa being second place. Like, that's my favorite personally. But there was so many great characters, and we knew we wanted to try to get some good character diversity in our cast, right? And this is just like when we're planning our skins and planning our gods. We want to get characters that have, different styles, different looks. We also had to constantly be thinking about which characters actually fit well on our gods, right? Which ones make sense, which ones don't. Korra, I mentioned originally, I think came up pretty passionate from a lot of people too, because we were doing Avatar, not just Avatar: The Last Airbender, right? We wanted to do justice to the IP as a whole, and Korra being the main protagonist from the newer series was really important to us. And then we also wanted to make sure I think we really wanted a villain in there too, because Avatar has some of the most complex and like some of the best villains that people actually care about as people. And I remember we were doing some internal studies and some external studies and found that Zuko was actually one of the most commonly discussed and commonly voted as their favorite character in the whole series. Does that sound correct to y'all?
Well, I think like Zuko is just such a great character because throughout the whole show he has just such a good character arc. He like you were saying, he kind of starts off as that villain, but then spoiler alert if you haven't seen the show, maybe I don't know, but he kind of grows and learns humility, and then there's that great turn too where he's like starting to kind of transfer to the good side, and he's like, no, I'm not ready yet, and then he gets there. And I think like the reason that he's so popular with people is he's just got this great story arc. You can really empathize from where he's coming from, and just I don't know. I think and I see Blue Spirit, and I'm pretty sure Mark and I were like the two people that were really gunning for Blue Spirit. and
it's a really cool alternate costume for him.
Yeah. I was like, we have to have him. He's not in the show a lot, but we have to have Blue Spirit. He's so cool. I'm so freaking pumped that we got him in there.
Well, a lot of our battle pass and crossover is structural. A lot of it is creative and passion, but then a lot of it is, okay, we need X characters, we need to have the prestige versions of the characters, we need to have characters that fit our characters' abilities, we have to have the time and people to do all this. There's a lot of different things that have to all align. A lot of times I describe it like a Sudoku puzzle. Like, you've got to find the perfect thing for everything. And if you put the wrong number in the wrong spot, it can throw off a whole huge section. You have to reorganize everything. And that's kind of what this pitch process is like for us internally. And we spend a lot of time planning, going through it. We found Korra we liked with Scotty. I know that was actually a kind of difficult character for us to pitch too. We weren't really sure what goddess might fit her the best. We liked Scotty because then we could have Naga in the game. And it took a little bit. I remember me and Mark and I think Ali working a bit more on Korra. Like, how can we make Scotty's abilities, feel like the 4 different elements, kind of like we did with Aang? And I think we did a great job on that. Then that was a big thing we discussed really early. Like, we were afraid to lock in Korra until we had a plan for that.
Right.
I remember even that initial. Keep going,
We're all
Mark.
excited.
You got it, Trevor. You got it, Trevor.
I just remember that initial concept when we were talking. Well, what is Scotty gonna work for her and for Naga? And then I remember you went into the editor that one day, AJ, and you're like, you know what? I'm just gonna make Calder 1.5 or 2 times bigger, and I'm just gonna see if it'll work. Let's just try it, right? And we looked at it, and it just fit well, right? And we did, there was that change, but it just felt like we could actually make the dog look just incredibly cool and totally fit everything for the dog there. It was so awesome.
Yeah, it wasn't as scary as we thought to make the dog bigger.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
That's a common process we go through at the studio. Is something sounds kind of scary or worrisome, and we're like, well, let's just test it. Let's just prototype it. We learn a lot from that in game development, and that was part of what made Korra a reality.
The harder things was getting rid of Scotty's spear and substituting it in with the water effect. I remember it looks really simple and it looks really clean and nice, but it was actually kind of hard to get that water trail to move right. And props to Ali again, who made it happen. It looked really
One
good.
of the themes of game development behind the scenes and panels and stuff like that is it's always more complicated than it looks.
It really is.
Everything is so much more complicated than the players see, which is great. That's like why we spend full time working on it, and it's worth it. So that's a good overview, I think, of the early process and a lot of the cool aspects of the 3 characters. Let's go a little bit through just the art pipeline, and we can come back to anything amazing about each of the characters at the end. So we get started. So we have our pitch, we have our business dealings all figured out with Trevor. Now we start the art pipeline. We're going to actually get working on these characters. We start with Mark and the concept team, right? And how does that first stage go for you, Mark?
Well, thankfully, all the characters were already concepted. So I didn't really have anything to do. We just did some Google image searching, and
we did some draw. Did we do some draw overs or anything like that?
No. All I did was concept some VFX because we had to know what Aang's air stance was going to look like and what the water was going to look like with Merlin's blizzard and stuff like that. So that's the only thing I had to concept. But I will forth for every character and make sure the details were spot on, because like if Aang's eyes were slightly wider than they're supposed to be, it looked off for some reason and we didn't really know why. So I remember there was a lot of issues with Aang's face at first where we had to go back in the card art and change it, and then in the models, it was kind of the same thing where Korra's ponytail was slightly too long and we had to just go back and nudge it back up a bit. And for Zuko, we had some of similar issues, but it was just not painstaking. I enjoyed it, every moment of it, but
very detail oriented.
Right. On each character, I had to go and do a deep dive and memorize the smallest pixels about each of them and go back and reapply stuff. But it's
really cool to see. We're working with almost a different medium here with this type of 2D animated show. The characters are designed in a very different way than our characters are designed. Aang doesn't have a whole ton of complexity to his character. Right. But when you start to look at the details, he really does, because as you mentioned, his head shape or his eye shape or just the bridge of his nose being off makes him look like a completely different character all of a sudden. So you have to be really, really on point with that. And I'm sure when we moved into 3D, we probably have some even more deeper discussions on modeling. I remember going through a lot of iteration on the modeling, making sure he looked like himself. And there was times where we were even looking at something different and then starting to notice something else on his body, right?
Designs
think,
are actually
like, John-
so simple, but at the same time so intentional with everything. So there's a reason his eyes are that shape. There's a reason his nose is that shape. There's a reason his head and his ears look the way they do. And if any of that is off, it feels off, and you got to find out why.
So once we got the model set up, we had the beautiful details like in the avatar having the scars from being hit by Azula. You know, we had those little details on there and the 3D. Then we have to start bringing them to life. So how did we go about the rigging animation process on these characters, Anna? What was our most important priorities there?
Yeah, so, you know, John did an amazing job modeling these characters and really capturing, like you guys were saying, those important shapes. And I know we had a discussion on, you know, what version of Zuko do we want to do? The earlier version of Zuko where he's, you know, got just the ponytail in the back and he's still kind of mean.
Or he does kind of have a lot of costume changes.
He does.
Yeah, so I think, like, you know, John hit that up really well. And then kind of back to, like, rigging for these characters, since they are so much more simple in a way, it was a challenge for the rigging team to really give us those cartoony face abilities. So we played a lot with, like, pupil scaling in the eyeballs and really being able to shape those mouths and so, you know, it's funny because it sounds like it's a really simple thing to make a more cartoony, more simplified character, but coming from our game, it's actually quite difficult because we don't have very robust face rigs in game.
Right.
So this kind of actually helped us figure out some really good changes, this was Pam and Lindsay on the rigging team. It helped us find some really good changes for our actually, like, future gods too. So now the faces are a little bit more robust, so we can get better facial expressions. Just because we had to kind of dial things back for simplicity, now we can use those tools in a more complex setting. But going back again, like, the littlest things are usually the hardest things, like that dang water.
Water.
I remember Allie spending, like, days testing this water rig and going back and forth and seeing how we can make it's made of geometry, it's made of, like, a digital you know, geometry. How do you make that feel like water? And just going back and forth with rigging and getting those controls so that we could have the fidelity to move it like water was such a really big task for something that's just so small. Just a little part of the character, but it helps so much. Like, if we didn't have that, I think Korra would not have felt the same. She wouldn't. The spear would have been weird. I don't know how we would have done it, but it worked.
So we developed a lot of new tech just to make the characters work. Then we go through the animation process of, you know, our animators manually placing the characters and moving them through these motions. A lot of research from the show, a lot of specific details on, like, making sure that their fighting stances look like the show, right, and emulating that in the same kind of way Mark mentioned with the 2D and the 3D. Any super memorable animation, like either in combat, out of combat, stances, anything like that super memorable that came up in the process?
Oh my god, there's so many. But
what's the best one?
But oh my god, it's hard to pick a best one. You know, for me personally, I think my favorite one, I got to do Aang's intro in the lobby, and I think, like, just frame by framing the actual intro from the show,
running into the statue and falling back.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And just seeing how I could, you know, take this already beautiful animation by these amazing studios like JM Animation, DR Movie, Moai Animation, and Studio Mirror, I think is how you pronounce it. I'm not really sure. And then the creators already gave us, like, these awesome characters to work with. It did, in a way, make our jobs a little bit easier because we had the references that were, like, super perfect to use. I know as a team, as an animation team, like, when we were brainstorming the different animations for each character, we go through a process of, like, listing out what would be a cool idle variant or what would be a cool way to have the character die.
Yeah.
We had so much fun. I'm pretty sure the meetings for each character went a little bit longer than they normally do because all of us were pulling these different pieces from the show, and like I said, a bunch of us are huge fans, so we could be like, oh well, like Zuko, he does a, Susanoo does a tornado. Oh, what if Zuko does that sweet firebending move that he does in the finale, that makes a tornado? Or little things like when in the intro I had to get Aang to get back to position. Like in the intro of the show, he just lays flat and then stays there for that little cut.
Oh, right.
But we had to get him back to the point where he can go into his other animation. So
I do remember this part now.
I searched like for moments in the show where Aang had fallen flat and then got himself back up to standing, and I found one that's from the very first episode. He like is trying to chase the penguin, where they penguin seals, and he kind of falls and then he like airbends himself back. I'm like, this is perfect. I'll cut both of these together. So there was a bunch of moments like that throughout the entire sets of all three characters that we really like tried to find specific references from the show to make sure that all these people did such hard work on them beforehand. Like
AJ,
before, this means a lot for us. So.
That brings up a really good point. As we kicked off the initial Avatar project, we didn't just talk to the SMITE team. We talked to the entire studio to build kind of an advisory board of Avatar superfans. And we wanted everyone in the studio that maybe had, loved the show at some point or worked, to be able to help us make sure that we just nailed it, right? And whether you worked on Paladins or Rogue Company, it didn't matter. We were here because of the love of Avatar, not just because we were on the SMITE team.
And they were a big, that Superfan Council was a big part of Merlin getting onto Aang and Korra Scotty, making those character matchups fit. That team did help a lot, and these were people at Hi-Rez, but not necessarily working on SMITE or on the art team. And we were just like, we want your feedback anyway, and that helped a lot. That's a great point, Trevor. I'm sure we could talk about the details of Avatar all day. As Anna mentioned, like she had a hard time picking that one animation, but thank you for picking one. We do have to talk about Turtles still. Mark, thank you for joining us. Mark is going to sub out for Mel, who was lead on Turtles. We're going to take a quick look at that awesome Avatar trailer we made, and then we'll talk about the Ninja Turtles.
Yeah.
This world is in trouble.
We can't let this happen. They need our help.
All right, that Avatar cinematic looking beautiful, but it's time to talk about the Ninja Turtles, and we're welcoming Mel here. Mel, can you just give us a quick introduction for yourself here?
Yeah, sure. Everybody hear me okay?
Yep.
Right on, cool. So my name is Mel. I'm a senior animator on SMITE, and I was the point artist specifically for Donatello, but I was also kind of a directional leader, part of the council like you guys had for Avatar. I was, we also had one for Turtles, and I was a big part of that as well. But yeah.
Awesome. Mel, one of our, if not the biggest Turtles fan at the studio at the time, which is where a lot of his skills came from in leading the direction for the Turtles, combined with his animation skills. So the Turtles pitch was a little bit of a different story, Trevor, as you can mention. It's also a Nickelodeon product, and we had already been working with them on Avatar. So the Turtles one, we just kind of hit the ground running. There wasn't a whole lot of like speculation and stuff like that, right, Trevor?
Well, there kind of was. We had this humongous internal discussion around: do we do all 4 turtles? Do we just pick 1 turtle, 2 turtles? Do we want Shredder?
True.
Do we want other people, Casey Jones or April? It took a long time to figure out, like, how do we land 4 turtles or not 4 turtles, and do we make people mad if we leave one out or not? And really, that's where the discussion actually led to asking Nickelodeon, like, hey, we actually want to do more. We want to do all 4 turtles. We want to do a chest. We want Shredder. We want Splinter. We're going to work in all of these other cool aspects and Easter eggs from Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and we're going to wrap it into this, more expanded, integration with them. And, they were totally on board, and they were really excited about us, thinking about Turtles to that next step. And really, as we think about the future of SMITE in 2021 and beyond, and we think about, what else could we do, we're just going to continue to push the envelope and take it to the next level. And Turtles is kind of that second step. It's not just the battle pass, but it's also adding in a couple extra skins that we couldn't quite figure out how to work through the battle pass, but we knew people might be disappointed if we didn't do them. Kind of like how we heard about, in the Avatar world, like, where's the other characters? There's only 3. Right. So we're like, you know what? Let's just do them all.
Yeah, that you're right. So we had kind of we had our business partners ready to go, but we had a really tough time as a studio deciding how were we going to actually do the turtles. So with Avatar, we kind of split up Aang's original crew. We don't have Toph or Katara, and we kind of did the main characters from the shows and the villains. But with the turtles, we were like, no, we can't just do 1 turtle. Like, that's just crazy. Like, with Aang, it kind of made sense. We felt like, Aang has a lot of a personal journey, a lot of that. The turtles are a team, like, all the time. They're very much a group, a unit, and we were like, okay, so we're going to have to make 4 skins for these turtles. They're kind of similar characters, but we want to make them feel different, but we have to do this in a way that's smart from a development perspective. And then if the whole pass is just turtles, then what do we do, right? So that's where we bring in Splinter and Shredder. So, like, really, I do remember the hardest thing was figuring out how are we going to do the turtles. And I know we talked a lot with, like, rigging and animation about, because this is rigging and animation for our players who aren't aware. They're very time consuming, very difficult processes to do on 3D characters. There's a lot of work to be done. It takes a lot of people, a lot of hours to make that work. So we're like, how do we do these turtles? And I remember the big question, and Mel and Anna, you can definitely speak to this, was the make or break. Was if we make the turtles essentially, as we would call, on a shared rig. So they have like a core skeleton, their base movement, their arms and legs, that is shared, but then we can give them all their unique treatments. Like Leo is the leader, and Donatello is smart, and we just make them feel different. Was that going to work at the time? So Mel, was there anything anything about that pitch that you were like, yes, this is going to work, I'm down, or were you like, I don't know, I'm scared?
Yeah. So one quick, when you were mentioning, like, do we do 1 turtle? Do we do all 4 turtles? It was pretty much, it had to be all 4 turtles, because when you think about the Ninja Turtles and how long they've been an IP, for everybody out there who's a Ninja Turtle fan has their favorite turtle. Everybody, like, you could talk to 4 different people, they probably give you 4 different answers about which turtle's their favorite. So to like leave off a turtle or 2 or 3, it would ruin it. It wouldn't be the Ninja Turtles. It would be a Ninja Turtle, which isn't. It's not as cool. It's 3 times less cool. So to answer, we had originally planned to just. I mean, they did share a rig. And they all have the similar proportions. So the way we were figuring out how to differentiate them was props and things about them that would fit the kit, would fit the character, and try and marry those 2 things together. We had also initially planned on having them share animations like wholesale across the board. And as we were working, we kind of realized, like, we're not really doing this justice because Raphael is going to act and move a little bit differently in his emotes and stuff like that than Michelangelo would and Donatello. So it was just like, okay, we have to kind of flip a little bit and try and give these a lot more of a personal touch than we had initially planned to do.
So it was a lot of animation work, but the shared rig turned out, I think, to be a really smart decision by the team. It allowed us to execute on these turtles. If we had to make 4 different rigs, it would have been a lot of almost redundant feeling work, perhaps, or it might not even have been possible based on our time schedule. We would have had to cut, huge amount of things.
It would have been
so
tight.
That worked out well. Yeah. And the characters feel so different now that you see them. When you see them playing, you see them fighting. And speaking of fighting, and I want to get Anna's opinion here on how did we do? One of my big priorities in the early pitch process was I want to decide the gods based on the combat. I alluded to this a little bit with the Avatar, but the Avatar characters, they have more, powers and magic, the bending, which creates some connections. The turtles are all very melee weapon fighting stance styles, and I wanted us to pick the gods that would fit the closest on that melee fighting stance styles. So how did we do? How did we do in the end? Does the Loki, Loki, Mercury, Osiris, and Sun Wukong? Was that the right choice, you think, Anna?
I mean, yeah. I'm a little biased, but I think it was pretty good. Yeah, I think, like, for me personally, one of the coolest things that we got to do was do, like you said, a lot of martial arts studies and trying to incorporate that kind of stuff into these turtles and how they move, and Sun Wukong and Loki and how they work as characters already have these awesome moves that work really well for the turtles. So I think it worked really well. I think it actually ended up, I think we did them justice. I know I play a lot of Hachiman now just because I want to be running around as Master Splinter. And I think it just like works so well. I love when we can hop in there and just when I can say proud of you in his voice to all my teammates and stuff. And I think they're just like genuinely fun to play as these specific characters. I think the characters like that we chose, yeah, I think it fits. Some of them fit better than others, personality-wise too. But yeah, I don't know. I think we did a good job. I'm proud of us.
No, because in the Avatar discussion. Oh, go ahead, Mel.
No, I was just gonna agree. Like there's no question. As somebody like myself, who I consider myself a really big, maybe not as Trevor said, the biggest turtle fan. There may be 1 or 2 other people, but I'm at least top 3. As one of the top 3 turtle fans, definitely, I feel like we definitely knocked it way out of the park and very true to the IP, as it exists through multiple versions, not all versions, but through multiple versions. We touch on a lot of the different aspects over the years.
So the main 2 we got are the more realistic modern turtles, which were the base battle pass rewards, and then we did your more classic retro throwback cartoony turtles to like my childhood as the prestige skins. But personally, those ones are my favorite. That's the one I always play, the radical versions. So we did both of those. Those are really cool and different. I'm sure we could talk. We actually had a lot of discussion on how we should do the different styles of the turtles, because the turtles have been reimagined in so many different. There is original black and white, like very serious comics, and then there's these more modern cartoons where the turtles are like crazy different sizes and shapes and stuff like that. So I mean, it was a tough call, right? It was a tough call.
Yeah, one of the other things that was interesting, that I just, I'm a business guy. I'm not creative. I am not an artist. I couldn't draw to save my life. But when the team came back and they're like, these are how we're going to make our gods work with the turtles, I was just blown away. Mel's talking about using the blimp for Donatello in the Sun Wukong form. And then, we're like, Michelangelo could have this skateboard that helps out with the ult to make it feel more real. Like, it was incredible. All of the different, like, unique, creative pieces of animation and just art that went into the uniqueness of each character and making them feel like turtles within our world of Smite. And it's just, it's huge. Like the team just absolutely crushed all of the work.
Well, we're very happy to hear that.
The skateboard was a bit of a stroke of genius. I don't remember who came up with it, but trying to, in particular with when Mercury is concerned, having to try and marry Michelangelo and Mercury together, we were like,
yeah, it was tricky.
That exists in the universe, like, let's do it.
We really looked at the core weapon style, and I was going to touch back on this a little bit on the weapons and how we decided on which gods would be which turtle. Donatello's Sun Wukong, I feel like, is the one that came together the soonest, because staff fighter, Donatello and Sun Wukong's are really the only other staff fighter. We had to deal with the animal transformations, but we already had the Dark Lord Sun Wukong skin a while back that used poses instead, so we kind of felt like that one was pretty laid out well. Then Leonardo and Raphael being both like dual wielders but in different degrees. I think Raphael came together the next best, because Loki and his twin daggers felt a lot like Raphael and his sai. But then we got into Mercury and Leonardo, and it was not so easy, because like we didn't really have a true like dual wielder in Smite elsewhere. We talked about Kali for a while because of her weapons.
Didn't we at one point talk about Mercury as Hebo riding like a surfboard and like?
Yep.
It was crazy.
Yeah, we did.
Crazy thoughts.
Having
We did have some
Michelangelo
crazy
Hebo.
ideas. And like that could have been cool. I think we could have done it, right? I think we could have done it. It would have been a lot rougher on rigging animation, because it would have been a Hebo on a surfboard is like a completely different rig than the rest of the turtles. And it would have been Mage, so like for some reason Michelangelo is like hitting you with pizza flying out of the ground or something. I don't know. We were like, it's a bit of a stretch. So we were like, who just uses motions who feel like they're using nunchucks? And we came up with this Mercury, because Mercury is quick and snappy and melee. And we were like, this started to feel really good. And Osiris, really, his weapons are kind of crazy when you look at him in base, but when the way he actually fights, he does use them like a traditional dual wielder. So it took us a while to see it, but it was kind of right there in front of us all along.
Exactly. Yeah, I remember that discussion about Hebo. We were talking about maybe it's maybe when Hebo does his geyser motion, it's like a manhole cover and sewer water comes up and knocks him.
But then the turtles we have kind of a serious tone on our base turtles. Like we wanted to make them really cool and make them the kind of action heroes they are, and we really let that drive a lot of the core kit design. And then the prestige is where, and the extra cosmetic items is where we got all of the fun and the silliness and some of the more cartoony elements, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And then we have Shredder and Splinter too. But no, Anna, please finish.
Sorry, yeah, I was gonna kind of go back to how you were saying that there's all of these different kinds of turtles and all of these different universes, pretty much. And I think something that was really cool about the base turtles in Smite is this is our version. Like it's completely our version of what these turtles would be in the Smite universe. And I think that's like, yeah, we nod to the other version, the cartoony version, the more classic version too. But this version is the Smite version of what the turtles would look like. And bringing Splinter and Shredder into that too, like that's the Smite version as well. And I don't know, I think that's really cool that we have like our own version of these guys now.
So I think Shredder Raven came up again in the discussions, and pretty much everybody was like, "Yup, that works." Like, no need for any big debates here. Yeah. Which was great, and this skin turned out really well, and it feels like Raven and it feels like Shredder. This is maybe one of the best like pairings we've ever come across. As far as it was a natural fit. A lot of these other things, we really had to rack our brains and do a lot of tech work and stuff, but this one just felt great. Any specific notes you'd like to give about Shredder here, Mel?
Well, I know Shredder didn't have a whole lot of animation variants. What Ravana does and what Shredder does. Primarily it was just cleaning up, because Ravana is fairly old, and some of his animations and some of the style of how he was animated was maybe a little over the top for Shredder, so some of that was toned back. Some of the kind of like wonkiness of the animation was cleaned up a little bit. And I know we were in discussions like, how do we incorporate some of the stuff from the show that existed for Shredder? And there were some people who wanted to do like Mousers for his abilities and stuff like that. And we were kind of going flipping back and forth. But I think in the end we came, we ended up with a really solid, as Anna said, SMITE version of Shredder. That's just like, he's kind of a badass. He's kind of scary, and he's gonna punch and kick you in your face, and that's totally fine for Shredder.
That one worked out well, for sure. And then we got onto Splinter, or honestly, we had a lot of other debates, right, about Krang, Bebop, Rocksteady, Baxter, Stockman. We had a whole bunch of discussions. What's the name of that other turtle?
Slash. We were like, should we do Slash or Metalhead and attach it to
Slash and Metalhead? Yeah, there was a whole bunch, but we were like, we're thinking about the most iconic characters in the Turtles universe, and Splinter kind of rose above all of those other. Those are essentially all like other villains that are kind of characters that come and go, but Splinter is always there. And
right,
Mel, tell me your Turtles. Use your Turtles knowledge for me here. How did we decide on how did we make these decisions for Splinter? Because he's a tough character. He's very different from a lot of the different versions of the show, and his combat style is a little elusive, right?
Yeah. So he's he's the teacher of the Turtles, right? Like, he taught them everything he knows, so he's a ninja in and of himself. But what I kind of keyed on with Splinter was, because we were trying to figure out who we should attach him to, and I was thinking, well, we have Hachiman, and he's already Japanese, and Splinter's, came from Japan. If you follow whatever storyline you follow, he either came from Japan or he was, a rat that turned human, or a human that turned into a rat, whatever. But it was like, I remember growing up, the Splinter toy had a bow and arrow, and there was like a vague memory somewhere of him using one in a movie, and I was like, wait, you got a Japanese god, Japanese kind of like attitude and everything like that. Splinter's Japanese. That dude uses a bow. Splinter uses a bow. The sword and the cane. And I was like, this is perfect. Like, I don't know of any other god we could have used that would have been better. I know people were talking about, well, it should be Ratatoskr, and I was like, come on, really? Like, Hachiman was definitely the way to go.
I think this one turned out great, and it was just, I think it's hilarious how in your story it was your childhood memories that helped spark how we should do this character. And that seems kind of coincidental, but I don't think it is, because a lot of times when we're working on these types of things, we try to ask ourselves, like, what are people going to expect? What are the players going to imagine? When I say Splinter to you, what is the picture in your mind, right? And we use ourselves as the team to kind of guesstimate that. And when Mel was remembering these iconic scenes from the movie and the way they sold the toys and stuff like that, and people were being like, oh yeah, I do remember that. And then we were seeing that when we were putting this image on screen, people were like, yep, that's Splinter, like, I get it, and that's kind of how we use ourselves as almost a test audience. Because we're all, we're gamers, we're fans of these shows, and we had the more high council in the Avatar scene because it was, we had a different group of people that were so detail oriented on about it. But because Turtles was so broad, we had different people that were fans of different Turtles and different times, and so we had to kind of like crowdsource it, I feel like, a little bit more amongst the team.
Yeah, for sure. And that's actually how we got to his ultimate, I believe. It was a little bit of crowdsourcing because we were like trying to figure out, how are we gonna do, like, should it be, I remember I was turtle themed horse, and we don't really need to change anything. Should it be like a motorcycle? Because the toys, they had like the Ninja Turtle motorcycle, and I was like, it's a, some people call their motorcycles their iron horses. I was like, I don't know, maybe it'll work. And then I forget who it was. Again, I'm sorry. I don't mean to not give you credit, but somebody was like, "We'll do Turtle Van." I was like, "How?"
Yeah.
All right, let's give it a shot.
The Turtles had a lot of crazy vehicles throughout the toys and throughout the shows and stuff like that. And this is probably a great place to end on because we're almost out of time. But as we're looking to add these little details to the show and look at ways to honor characters that weren't made for full skins, we came up with the Turtle Van. It was a pretty iconic thing throughout a couple different eras of the show. And not only did we do that and make it fit Hachiman's ultimate really well. We put April and Casey Jones in the driver and passenger seat in the van, so they're in the game.
That was awesome.
Which is a really cool
It was
achievement. So, we're almost out of time here. I want to give you all, Trevor, Anna, Mel, any final thoughts about the Turtles, Avatar, the crossovers of Smite, and, other than the fact that we're super excited for the future, we're just going to keep doing more cool stuff like this.
I think from my side, real quick here, it's just a testament to what the team has done and created over the last year and a half with RWBY and then Avatar and then Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. That just makes my job not only exciting and a joy, but just so much easier. The team just crushes what they're doing. And, I could call up people at these studios and I'm like, hey, watch this trailer, watch what we did. And they look back and they're like, yeah, I would love to work with you guys. This is incredible what you're doing. So I guess in my final point is just keep your eyes peeled. I bet you there's lots of fun stuff coming in 21 and beyond. And I can't wait to continue working with the SMITE team on what's next.
Anna?
Yeah, I agree completely. Like, I think, we started with RWBY, and every single time we do a new IP, we're just continuing to raise that bar and get more tools for ourselves and, continue to learn lessons about the pipeline and learn what works, what isn't working, what, really hits for our players and stuff. And I'm excited to see what we come up with for the future too. And I think that our player base will really like it as well. I think, like another thing just I can't reiterate enough is how we're fans of this stuff too. I honestly, like, I don't know much about the Turtles. At least I didn't know much about the Turtles before working on this project. And like Mel and Matt and the rest of the animation team, everybody's enthusiasm in like the IP that we're working on, and they're having these nostalgic moments of, oh, I had a toy that was just like this, or man, do you guys want to get together and watch this movie so we can get some inspiration after work? And we did that a few times. Now the Turtles are like part of my heart, and I think, like, I don't know, that's kind of a cool aspect of it too, is like some of us kind of come in as not fans of the IPs, but we turn over pretty quick.
Yeah, so for me, it's I'm still, I don't know, it's been 2 months now at this point, and I'm still kind of over the moon about the opportunity that was given to me and to all of us to work on specifically for the Turtles, also for Avatar, but specifically for me, for the Turtles, being a storied kind of like almost legendary IP that's literally stood the test of time. To just be able to have a piece of that I was, was a part of, is just tremendous. And it's really fantastic.
I love that. I mean, it is really the biggest thing about this that I love the most is that our art is impressing people across the industry and even in other industries related to ours. Like, they are blown away by our art. They're like, I haven't maybe heard of SMITE, but that is amazing. That is crazy what you all are doing over there. And that I love that. And I generally focus on gameplay. That's more where my realm is, but how our characters look and feel and these different alternate forms you can assume as a god is almost as much important to gameplay, or more important than the balance to different people in our audience, right? We have a really diverse group of SMITE players, and this is really exciting gameplay to people as well, to just be a different character. Even if your abilities do the same amount of damage, playing as Aang feels so different, and that's really cool. And I just wanted to say thank you to you all. Thank you for joining us here on this panel today. Thank you to our players out there watching and attending this SMITE World Championships event. And thank you to our partners who have let us work with you and been excited to work with us and been impressed by our art. We're just going to kind of try to, keep getting better and better and better as we go into the next years. And as far as I can see right now, that is going to continue happening.
For sure.
Awesome.
All right, so I think with that, we're going to sign off. So wave goodbye and say thank you, and we'll catch you in our other HRX Smite World Championship related events.